Revolution of common sense.
Revolution of common sense.
A revolution of common sense.
Truth was once common sense, but today, truth is uncommon. Explore biblical truths around faith, business, and politics with Peter Demas. Uncommon Sense in Current Times.
Hey folks, welcome to Uncommon Sense in Current Times. I'm here today to talk with Greg Schaller, who is the director of the Centennial Institute at the Colorado Christian University. He leads efforts there to address culture and political issues from a biblical perspective. He previously served as the president of the John Jay Institute. He taught politics at CCU. He had a very successful student internship program. He holds degrees from Eastern University, Villanova University. He's known for his strong advocacy of parental rights and religious liberty. And today we are talking about the Kelly Loving Act, something I did a solo podcast on recently, and wrote an article about it because it is such a damaging, scary act, and the governor has signed it. So I'm very excited to have Greg on to talk about this. And so, Greg, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Peter. And I thank you for bringing attention to this. It's been a somewhat stealth bill that has passed through the Colorado legislature and was just signed by the governor on Friday. Very little attention has been brought to this bill, and I think it's truly an act of evil. Just a violation of so many important fundamental liberties that we have possessed. And more attention needs to be paid attention to this issue. And I think a lot of people in other states need to pay attention because there's an agenda behind this that's going to push it through many, many states.
So let's just kind of talk about it. The Kelly Loving Act, it was actually named after Kelly Loving, who was a trans individual who got shot in a nightclub. But this
That's
has
right.
absolutely nothing to do with nightclubs, shooting, hate crimes, anything like that, correct?
No, this is an act that mostly is dealing with young people, with minors, and allowing permission for people other than parents to make extraordinarily important, life-changing decisions and assisting minors with these life-changing, decisions that are being made. Our daughters did middle school and high school here in Colorado. We had moved from Pennsylvania to start working at CCU. And I can remember back when my daughters could not get an aspirin without parental consent. And now you think about things that are happening here in the state of Colorado, both with trans issues, but also with abortion, that they are facilitating decisions for minors absent parental consent. It's striking. It is just absolutely shocking. So it's a real violation of parental authority, things that are happening here right now.
So for those people who aren't aware of it, and shame on you for not listening to my show more often, but but for those who aren't listening, explain exactly what this law is doing that is taking that allows the state to take people's kids away.
Yeah, there's several components of it. So there's threats against religious liberty, there's threats against free speech, there's threats concerning parental rights. So there's terms that hopefully your listeners are aware of, but if not, dead naming and misgendering are a big part of this. So what those words mean is that if a person decides to assume a different identity and a different gender, and then with that, they assume a new name. If you call them by their original name or you refer to them by their biological gender, you can be in violation of Colorado's Anti-Discrimination Act. And there's punishments that go with this. The law is fairly vague, so we're not exactly sure. A lot of the details still have to be figured out. Colorado has a Civil Rights Commission, and I imagine they will be the ones who will determine what will the penalties be. So you can get in trouble for this. Places of public accommodation can get in serious trouble for misgendering or dead naming somebody. Again, we're not exactly sure what the punishments will be, but if you think back to the Jack Phillips case of Masterpiece Bakery, he was fined thousands of dollars for failing to produce a wedding cake for a same-sex couple, and he was threatened with having to go to sensitivity training. I imagine something similar could happen here with this. So that's places of public accommodation. And we'll have to come back to this. There's no protections right now for religious organizations. The only clear protection seems to be for ministers. Other than that, so schools, colleges, other Christian organizations don't seem to have any protection in this. The other big threat is with parents. Parents could lose custody potentially of their children. And we also know that in disputes, when there's a divorce and a custody battle going on, this could very much rise to the fore, where a parent who refuses to acknowledge a transitioned or transitioning child would definitely lose custody based upon this law. So we can see you're forcing people to tell a lie, basically, if those who refuse to acknowledge a person who's assumed an identity other than what their biology is. So your coercive speech, parental rights are under threat, and also religious liberty is under threat.
Yeah, because they're defining dead naming and misgendering as coercive control,
Yeah,
which is traditionally used in a domestic violence situation.
yeah.
But by doing so, hypothetically, the kid goes to a very liberal school or has a very liberal teacher who convinces I'll just use a hypothetical. A young boy convinces this young boy that he is really a girl, and that his name should change, from Bob to Barb. And, so he comes home and tells his parents this. The parents have no authority at this point in time. And if they try to do something different, it's called coercive control and they can lose custody. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. And it's extraordinary to think that the state is giving authority to somebody other than parents in these hugely important issues. I don't want to dismiss the significance of gender dysphoria. It is real, and there's young people, unfortunately, you have great confusion about this. But what's happening here is that they are actually granting authority, permission to somebody other than a parent to assist a minor in making these extraordinarily life-changing decisions. One of the things that the research is really beginning to show is that 95+% of young people, of minors who are dealing with gender dysphoria, normalized by the age of 21.
Right.
The development of the brain does not happen until ultimately the age of 25, where we have the fullness of this. So you are going to tamper with, you're going to potentially mutilate, to do all sorts of things to a minor who has confusion and assisting in them with this. And they always throw around these threats. Well, your child's going to commit suicide if you don't assist them in this transitioning. The evidence is actually showing more and more that that is not the case, that confusion does not go away. And the concerns about this and the suicidal tendencies exist even with those who have begun the transitioning or completed a transitioning process. One of the things that's happening right now is that other countries are waking up to this reality. We've seen this where Great Britain, which was sort of pushing this agenda a few years ago, has now basically done a complete nationwide ban on these transitions, especially for minors. And here we have alleged experts who are continuing to push this agenda. I don't know if you recall, but the Supreme Court actually looked at this in the fall, a case of Tennessee, a law that was going to end transitioning for minors. And the Solicitor General under the Biden administration continued to refer back to the British studies, the older British studies, which favored this policy. Well, now those British studies have almost all been debunked.
So, but coercive control in order to do this. So if I call you again by your wrong name,
Mhm.
and I insist on calling you by the wrong name, they say it's withholding basically the your ability to make your own choices.
Mhm.
But wouldn't that be true too if I'm like, okay, you need to eat vegetables. Chicken nuggets and pizza is not a healthy diet. You need to eat vegetables. Hey, you know what? You do better if you get a good night's sleep. So you got to have a bedtime at 8 p.m. But the child doesn't want either one of those. Why is that not a coercive control, but calling you by the name that I chose to give you considered coercive control?
Yeah, it's extraordinary. The inconsistencies are real. Um, they're sort of picking and choosing. You get back to the exact same example I gave about my daughters not being able to take aspirin without my consent. They don't see the inconsistencies here. They somehow think that they have the best interests of the child involved, and that parents, biological parents, do not. That's extraordinary. I've tried to get myself into the mind of the authors of this legislation, the advocates of this. It's just frightening to me that they actually think that they could possibly care more for somebody else's child more than the actual parents do. That they don't. This is not an act. They've convinced themselves, they persuaded themselves that this is an act of love, but it cannot be an act of love that's based in a lie. And allowing and permitting and assisting somebody to deny their biological reality is a lie. This is not an act of love.
Obviously, I mean, the Bible's very clear on that. That love does not rejoice in truth, and so. But the other piece that I find so fascinating in it, I can't remember it's Section 7 or Section 8 of the law. It basically says that the state can still use the legal name. That
Right.
that so again, if you're Bob wanting to become Barb, the state now says, "Oh no, we can still use Bob." That to me, I can't even wrap my head around that, because it's like, if it's so wrong and it's so coercive control, but the state says they can, to me it implies that the state, just by that alone, says we have more rights to your children than you do.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
I think that's absolutely right. And again, that sort of mindset is just a total breakdown of something that is fundamental to humanity, and certainly something that's been very well protected in United States law. The Supreme Court has continually upheld parental rights, parental authority, and not allowing the state to coercively take that away. So what Colorado is doing here is really quite extraordinary.
So then the other thing I see with this law that makes it very concerning is, currently right now and I'm going to kind of read from the law here in Colorado law. It's a class 1 misdemeanor. A person commits a bias motivated crime if they they place another person in fear of imminent lawless action. Well, now dead naming and misgendering is now a lawless action, and they do so because of the person's actual or perceived sexual orientation. It seems like this is not, because of this law got put in, there's not a stretch to pull that in to a misdemeanor with very little problem. So in addition to a custody issue, it seems like now all of a sudden we can make this criminal because it's now lawless to dead name or misgender. Do
Right.
you, am I reading that correctly?
I think it's a possibility. There certainly is going to be civil penalties. I think there's no question about that with, places of public accommodation doing this. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if it continues to be pushed down that road to criminal.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, the civil penalties right now for the anti-discrimination, I think, is 3,500 for each
Right.
violation.
Right.
And so one of the things that I did the math on it, I'm like, okay, if I call my child the real name 3 times a day in a month, that's a $300,000 fine.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unreal how they're trying to force it. So obviously, it doesn't make sense logically. The only explanation I'm going to have is spiritually. So from your perspective, can you think of any reason why this law would ever get passed in the current state outside of a spiritual component behind it?
No, I don't. I mean, I think it's an act of evil. It's just, again, it's a denial of so many fundamental liberties, but it's an assault. It's an attack on biology, on science, on reason, on common sense, and then the others, of course, parental rights, religious liberty. Something that I'm very concerned about is that they're not carved out a strong protection for religious organizations. I work at Colorado Christian University.
How to
We
get
have
there?
a very strong lifestyle covenant that all participants, faculty, staff, students are required to acknowledge and comply with. We do not allow for people who are unmarried, and that's the biblical view of marriage, man and woman, to cohabitate. And if the university finds out about this, it could be a same-sex couple, it could be an opposite sex couple. They're not allowed to work here unless they get themselves into compliance with this. We have the expectation that people acknowledge their biological sex and conform to that. So we're worried. What happens if a trans person applies to become a student or for employment here at CCU? We want to make sure that we are protected and that we can have our biblical lifestyle covenant as an expectation for participation in our community. And right now, that protection is not there. There's another case that has just been brought by the Alliance Defending Freedom here in Colorado of a biblical camp, a biblical summer camp. It's a camp called Idrahaji. The initials stand for I'd rather have Jesus. It's the first two letters of each of those. It's a camp based about 45 minutes southwest of here in Bailey, Colorado. They have been ordered by the state to allow for individuals who identify with their non-biological sex to cabin and shower with people. Idrahaji Camp went to the state and says, we are a Christian camp. We've been licensed by the state for 30 some years, and you are now ordering us to do this. And they requested a waiver, and the state of Colorado denied them the waiver. So they have to make a decision. Do we operate as a licensed camp or not? Because licensure will depend upon their compliance as of right now. Fortunately, Alliance Defending Freedom has filed suit against the state. But I'm very concerned in this case, and again, the case of Christian schools like CCU, Christian K through 12 schools across the state.
Now, I recently wrote a book called "On the Duty of Christian Civil Disobedience," and these cases seem to be, because a lot of people don't have the funding, they don't have the ability to be proactive with it. I know ADF and Pacific Justice Institute, Liberty Council, they have there's amazing that they give their services for free. But at the same time, there's still a whole lot that they have to kind of be prepared for in these situations. Yet I argue that if enough people do it, that it's actually will present a better opportunity to share the gospel than not. Do you think with these situations that are presenting in Colorado, I mean, again, Jack Phillips is a great example. I mean, they keep going after him to so much that now they're like, no, you have to actually pay him back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So do you think these are situations that we need to be warning the parents of, warning these Christian organizations? Is that a conversation y'all are having within your university of how we're going to say no in these situations? Because I know y'all aren't going to give in.
Yeah. No, I mean, we talk about this often. I had a former colleague when I was here teaching before. He's now retired. He's a history professor. And he said, if we cave to the state, I'd rather the university burn to the ground. And I think that's the attitude that a lot of us have. I mean, I love this place. I love this university. I love the fact that it wants to stand for truth. If it fails to do that, it's going to be no different than any other secular institution. And why be here? We need to stand firm. And I guess one of the things that's really been concerning to me is that far too many Christian organizations, far too many churches have been silent on this issue. We actually hosted an event here on campus on April 15th, where we had people who've been directly impacted by this issue on our panel. We had a pastor on this panel, and one of the things he acknowledged was that it's the large churches in Colorado have largely been silent. It's really been the smaller and medium-sized churches that have been doing this. And we have to ask this question, why? Why are far too many pastors not willing to step into this and speak the truth? Because what the state is doing, I mean, I keep coming back to this, but it's violating religious liberty. It's violating parental rights. It's coerced speech, which is what this is doing, which is largely what the case with Jack Phillips came about. The state was trying to force him to use his creative abilities to make speech that he did not want to do. And that's what this bill is doing, forcing people to call somebody what they are not, to lie and acknowledge a gender that is not their actual biology. How can the church be silent on these issues? It can't. And I hope that we have a wake-up call for our pastors and other religious organizations that we can't be silent and we can't cave.
So now that it has passed, I mean, and granted, it's only at the time of this time we're recording this, it's only been passed for a few days. So, but have the churches decided to do anything at this point in time, or is it the same thing? They're still being silent in the face of this of the governor's signature.
I've not heard anything about other churches who had been silent finally stepping up. It seems to be the people that are talking about this are the ones, the pastors, the churches that were, dealing with this, talking about this for the past 2 months. They're now trying to figure out what are next steps. But we welcome other people from stepping into this. I think, again, I don't know if it's just conflict avoidance, it's a fear of what the state might do to them next. But again, we just can't be silent at this time.
I have to say, if anybody is attending one of those churches that's listening to this, shame on you for not pushing your pastor more
Yeah.
on it, because it goes beyond the pastor. It goes to the people as well that are attending these churches. I know it's scary, but some people have to speak up, and I'm
Yeah.
glad your university is doing so and not caving in. Where do you think this will go next? Like, what do you think do you think they're going to, now that they have this considered a success for the moment, do you think they're going to expand this in there? And do you think it's to take children away, promote the LGBT, or do you think it is strictly just silent those that could challenge them?
I guess we're going to see. I mean, as I mentioned, I think this is going to have to go to the Colorado Civil Rights Commission for them kind of fill in a lot of the gaps. Everyone who's studied this bill recognizes how vague it is. Even I think a lot of the sponsors of it recognize that it was a very poorly written bill. So we're going to have to see what exactly are they going to do? What are the punishments ultimately going to be? But there's very much an agenda here that wants to assume an authority and assist young people who are dealing with gender dysphoria in the process of transitioning. It's very clear. And I think we're going to start seeing more and more cases where acting on their authority, absent parental consent, children are going to be harmed, greatly harmed. I have a friend who's an attorney, and I've asked him about this a lot. What is the way this is going to stop? And he believes it's going to be litigation. It's going to be that a person who is assisted in transitioning recognizes the great harm that was done, and you begin suing these people. You sue the school administrators, sue the teachers, you sue the medical professionals. And when that begins to happen, things are going to stop very quickly. I think that's his argument. So that maybe that's the path we're going to have to go down is litigation on this. When doctors can't get their medical malpractice insurance,
Right.
they're going to stop doing these procedures. I know that, there's some protections for government officials in this, but if we can start suing school administrators and suing teachers and they don't have an immunity, and they start to really, face this in their wallets, they're probably going to think twice about these actions. But they definitely have an agenda.
I agree. I'm also an attorney, and I agree with that is a way to get it to stop. The problem that I see, though, is it's still in their hearts.
Yeah,
Yeah, I may not do it because of because of my pocket, but I'm not doing it because my heart gets changed.
yeah,
That to me is so concerning that we've gotten to this point that we can, you know, we're not Middle East and China persecution of Christians, but we are moving in that direction from a country that it was just pretty normal, 10, 15 years ago.
yeah.
Um, so now, just to shift gears just a little bit, because my son attended a conservative Christian school here in the South, and I found that the what was being taught was very anti-biblical in a way. It was very DEI, et cetera. But y'all have maintained a very strict code in how you look at things. Some could argue it being legalistic in a way. Do you think that legalism helps when you're dealing with the state pushing laws like this? Or do you think that that's one of those, kind of up in the air, not really sure how that all kind of, should we continue in that path? Where do you fall on that?
Yeah, I guess I don't know if I'd use the language of legalism. I would just use it that we're in the pursuit of truth. We believe in capital T biblical truth, and that's what we're pursuing. All of our faculty, all of our staff have to sign on not just to our lifestyle statement where we agree to comply with God's biblical order, but we have to have, a Christian faith. We have to believe in the triune God. I mean, the basically the principles that are laid down in the Apostles' Creed. All of our employees have to subscribe to this. So we are on guard against heresy. When we see it, we don't want a part of it, and we don't want it certainly to be a part of our university, and we don't want it to be a part of our academic experience for our students. So we uphold a very high standard. Yeah, I mean, I guess someone could describe that as legalism, but it's to us, it's the pursuit of biblical truth and wanting to conform ourselves, our lives, our intellect to that biblical truth. So, yeah, I mean, we're on guard against this, and we are very much aware that there are threats to that. And so we annually, all of CCU's employees have to agree, sort of one up on this. Yes, we still believe in these truths.
Well, I think that's amazing. So, if people want to learn more about Colorado Christian University, and or learn more about kind of like how this law is impacting the people of Colorado, so that they can be aware, because this isn't going to just stay in Colorado. It will spread very easily, and I know other states are already considering similar laws. Um, so that they can be better prepared, better on guard. Where can they go? How can they find out about both the university and also kind of what's happening in Colorado on this?
Yeah, it's ccu.edu, and from that webpage, you can get to the Centennial Institute, the public policy academic center that I run on campus. And we are going to continue to be working on this and other issues dealing with culture, dealing with faith. Because we know we're living in a state that is very hostile to what it is we believe. We've talked about Jack Phillips a few times. Lori Smith was the website
Yeah.
designer, and she was being forced by the state civil rights commission to make wedding web pages for they attempted to force her to do it. She refused wedding web pages for same-sex marriages, and she refused because she subscribed to the biblical view of marriage as one man and one woman. There's another case here that's now at the Supreme Court that will be heard this fall, the case of Kaylee Childs. She's a Christian counselor, and she speaks to her clients about a biblical worldview and biblical marriage and biblical human sexuality. And the state of Colorado has ordered her to not talk about that when she's dealing with people who are struggling with same-sex attraction or dealing with gender dysphoria. So again, Alliance Defending Freedom has taken up her case. It was granted cert by the Supreme Court a few weeks ago, and they will hear that case this fall. This is all being brought by the Colorado Civil Rights Commission and other agencies within our government. So there's an extraordinary hostility to biblical truth and people who are attempting to live their lives, operate their businesses, operate their universities and their K through 12 schools, and now their summer camps in compliance with that biblical worldview. And our state of Colorado keeps coming after them on issue after issue.
Well, that's unreal. Well, I pray that the churches get involved there and
Yeah.
start putting pressure on these politicians, because the politicians reflect the hearts of the people. And until churches start getting involved, and I say churches again, I'm not talking about the pastors, I'm talking about the people that are sitting in the pews.
Yeah.
Until they start getting involved, we will not start seeing changes. So,
Yeah.
well, Greg, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate you being on the show, and talking about this very important issue. I look forward to talking with you again, because I'm certain that this issue isn't going to be the last time that y'all
Yeah.
are going to face this
Good.
pressure.
Good. Yeah, thank you very much, Peter. And as I said at the beginning, thank you for bringing more and more attention to this, because Christians need to be prepared that our worldview is under attack.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you again. I appreciate you, and God bless you. You have a great day.
Thank you so much.